Hello, it's Sunday afternoon, a little bit closer to the evening at this point. 6:15. I just took a nice Sunday Sunday afternoon nap. I made some Detroit style pizza earlier this afternoon with a lot of pepperoni and bratwurst, believe it or not. I don't know if that's a legitimate ingredient, but it was good. A ton of tomato sauce, and I had to use Mexican cheese. It's gonna have mozzarella. But I made the dough yesterday, so it was ready to roll. But a Pyrex pan's pretty large, as you know. 8.5 by 5 or something, I don't know. But it's big. And I ate about half the pizza. So, and then I drank 2 Yangling lagers, 2 of the 60 ounces. So I was pretty tired after all that, which is fine for me. I can drink up to 3 beers a day. When I say 3 beers, it's typically higher ABV. I just opened Brooklyn Brewery, Oktoberfest. Brooklyn sold a part of its holdings to Kirin, and Japanese company, 24% minority stake. That's not the end of the world for me. A lot of times these craft breweries get to a certain size, and they have to capitalize to get into distribution networks, and a lot of these larger conglomerates have all that stuff already defined. Part of the problem is our stupid beer laws in the United States, but there's other logistics that are involved. So I'm cool with the Japanese. I have no problem with the Japanese owning part of this, as long as they keep the beer good. Now, this is not the time for Oktoberfest. That's typically September going into October. So you know something's fishy here. What is the fishy story, Bierkgaard? You tell me, Bierkgaard. You tell me what the fishy story is. Well, let me tell you after I pour this bad boy. I cleaned this cup, but it's still got a few things on it there. It's not going to poison me, I hope. So Oktoberfest beers are traditional. They're lagers. You could probably deduce some things about the beer also by looking at it. I don't know if Brooklyn's known for lagers or not, but it's a darker color, which is typical for Oktoberfest. I always felt like Yangling Lager's Oktoberfest, they should just make that year round, because it's actually better beer than their lager, the regular lager. But it's more costly to make it. It has more malt in it, which is an expensive ingredient. A lot of malt's not grown yet in the United States. A lot of it comes from Canada, other locations. Although barley can do decently. It's first barley and then it's malted, but that can do in certain locations in the United States. Pennsylvania, there's certain varieties of barley that do okay. So let me take a sip of this first. Okay, so I'll tell you the story. It's good. I'll tell you the story of how I obtained this. I have a decent amount of beer right now from home brewing, so I'm really not in the situation where I need to buy more beer. It's one of those things that I don't typically run out of. I typically have enough beer here to survive over a decent amount of time. Most of it's homebrew, but there's other stuff here too. Just like coffee, I wouldn't run out of coffee. Those are my 2 mainstays, believe it or not. Other stuff I can run out of. It's not that big of a deal. Eggs, like to eat eggs every morning, so I always have eggs on hand. So I was out playing some disc golf the other day, close to my home course, which is down in Her. It's not too far away from here, probably 10 minutes by car. The roads are a little sketchy, so I don't ride my bike down there, a little far, so I take the car down. There's another course that's even closer than that, but it's still in development. It's a little bit more challenging in the sense it's much more woodsy. Her is a good solid course. It's pretty flat for the most part. Doesn't have a ton of wood shots, although it has trees and stuff, but not wood shots. It has a few wood shots that are really nice. So anyway, I was down playing some disc golf 2 days ago. Beautiful day in the 50s, sunny, not too windy. And then yesterday we got a boatload of snow, 4 to 6 inches. There was a huge accident up on 581 because of a whiteout. 73 cars got caught in a whiteout because of the blowing of the snow. I really don't know why people drive in the snow like that. If it's in the snow, if it's snowing and you're out and about, I don't know. You seem like you're asking for trouble. There was an accident, also 2 accidents on 283 yesterday. So 581 is a shitty road, period. I hate going up there because that road is shitty. It's narrow. It's got 2 lanes, but it has tons of merges, has tons of exits and traffic coming from other main arteries. And in central Pennsylvania, Harrisburg most definitely has the worst roads. I'm from Philadelphia. I know bad roads. The Schuylkill 95. Those are bad roads. And man, 581 is bad. And I can't understand why somebody would, in the middle of a snowstorm, unless it's an absolute emergency, would go out in 581 and be driving around. So maybe they learn. I just don't get it. There's some people that obviously have to go to work, have to do something. Most of the time, however, they can just wait it out and then wait for the winds to die down and for the snow to stop and for the roads to be plowed and for the ice to be melted through the salt. But I'll get on a rant here. So anyway, I was out playing disc golf. It was beautiful, and that distributor is only a couple blocks away from the disc golf field. How convenient. And I always like to stop by. Sometimes I just window shop. I walk around the store for half an hour and I don't buy anything. Because there's 3 things in life I like to buy. Number 1, beer. Number 2, coffee. Two. Number 3, books. And I honestly can't say that I like to shop for anything else. No, not really. Beer, coffee, books. And if the place has all 3, that's even better. I do shop for my regular food at a place called AJ's, which is a discount grocer. When I say discount, I call it scavenger mart, man. It is scraping, boy. But occasionally they have really, really good stuff in there. Some fine stuff from Trader Joe's or Whole Foods, or just very close to the expiration date. Common theme in what I look at, stuff with tight expiration dates, because you reduce the cost. I am retired, so I have to avoid being flagrant about spending money. I've always been rather frugal. And I spent probably $2,500 to $3,000 recently on my trip through the Midwest, the Drinking with Lincoln tour. I think it's going to be $2,500, plus I did my taxes, and this year is a punishing year because I had my retirement, plus I had my salary. It was ugly. So I am going to see a huge amount of money leaving my bank account, and I have to wait and let it build back up before I take on my next adventure. So I'm homebound for a bit, which is cool. That's the plan. So I stopped by this distributor, and I bought an Abbey Double bomber bottle. It's like a I don't know, man. How many ounces is that? 22. It's like 2 beers and like another third. And it's Omegong's Abbey Double. I'll probably do a profile on it. And that was $8, and that's a good price for that. That'll run $10, $12 other places. And it's bottle conditioned, so it's in good shape. It'll be fine. But they have a $10 minimum there at the Kirkner's that I go to because of the credit card limit. With Discover I get 4% back. So a lot of retailers do have a minimum amount that you have to buy. So I wasn't planning on buying this Brooklyn Oktoberfest, but these are $1 a bottle. They have kind of a free standing shelf of stuff that's dated that you can kind of build a 6-pack off of, which is nice. Pennsylvania's getting a little bit more consumer friendly with its beer laws. So I got 2 of these and got really close to $10 and over the top, that kind of thing. So I bought it, and it's pretty tasty. It might taste a little bit old. I don't know. I don't normally buy this beer, so I'd have a hard time comparing it to something else. It doesn't taste skanky, though. And one of the things that helps that is the bottles are brown. Okay, so that helps with the light issue. It has 5.5% alcohol, and the date that it wanted, it still calls itself an independent brewery because it's not majority owned by a corporation or a conglomerate, so it still has the independent tag right here. If you ever wonder if a brewery is independent craft brewery, that means it's majority owned privately. It's not like owned by stock market, or it's not public, or it's not a conglomerate. It'll have this this independent thing right here, if you can see it. It's very common. It's an upside down bottle that says independent. So this is seasonal, so it probably runs like August to October, or in this case, March, because it's been sitting around. But again, I don't really notice it being super skanky or anything, but it might suffer a bit because it's a little bit older. I'd have to try out a fresher one and see. Now, the craft beer market, I want to kind of finish this up here, try to do this under 13 minutes here. Craft beer market has been very heavily dominated, especially by local craft breweries, by the ales. And there's some reasons for that. I may have talked about this before. Ales ferment quicker. Lagers take more time. They're fermented at a cold temperature. That's the difference between an ale and a lager, essentially, is how it's fermented. And it takes up more space because you have to chill the vert and let it ferment slower. It's probably going to take 3 times as long to ferment your lager. If it's everything else is the same, ales, like, ale and lager, same ABV, same grain bill, same yeast, same hops, just throw it all in there. And you can do that with beers. You can do that exactly the same way. You would have to change the yeast, though. It would have to be a lager yeast versus an ale yeast, but the same amount, the same type. That ale is probably going to be done a lot sooner, a third quicker. So the lager is going to have to take a longer time. And there's a reason why it's done that way. When you ferment at a cold temperature, you suppress some of the wild flavors that can happen when you ferment at a higher temperature. Like, there's a huge difference if you're fermenting an ale and you ferment it at 85 versus 90. It's going to bring out different flavors. The yeast is going to have a different effect on the mix. So lager was something that the Germans instituted because they have the deep caves and the places where they could put these barrels below ground level and could suppress the off flavors in the beers. Because if it's too high a temperature and you don't have good protocol and good sanitation, or just the heat itself, like, it doesn't go bad, but it's just got a weird taste to it. It's not going to taste the same if if it was at one time it's fermented at 75, next time it's fermented at 85. The beers are going to be very inconsistent. If you know anything about the German mindset, and I do because I had German grandparents right off the boat after World War I, is the German mindset traditionally, it's probably changed a bit, but they like consistency. They don't like things to be one way one time and one way the next. It doesn't sound very systematic if you do that. It sounds kind of chaotic. So the Germans are very orderly, and it's one of the reasons why they make really good equipment. They make really good machinery. It's because it's built to last, and they have a process, and they're disciplined, they're detail-oriented. So the lagers were like a German style. They had plenty of ales in Germany too, but there was a riot one time that was fairly significant where the beer wasn't good and it was inconsistent and the people didn't like it, and then they did riot, and then they instituted some lagering techniques and things like that. It's probably already existing and just became more common. So craft breweries have gone very heavily into the ale direction. Sorry about that. I had to let that out. I wasn't going to try to sneak that one out. I just had to let it rip. Sorry about being so uncouth. It's probably that pizza. So the craft breweries really emphasize the ales. It's quicker. You don't need as much storage room. And the fermentation, get it out of the tanks quicker, get it in the bottles quicker, get it into your sixtils, whatever. Boom, done deal. So the lagers also kind of fell out of favor because people have a bad taste in their mouth about American lager, because the kind of lagers that were mass marketed for years and years and years and years and decades, like Budweiser, Coors, and all the big players, Miller. It's called a light lager, which means they really minimize the amount of malt that they use in the kind of grain bill, and they use adjuncts a lot of times. Like Budweiser uses a lot of rice, so it gets like a really clear, clean, but not very tasty beer. So that lagers are what people know. They know, like, oh, that's what I grew up with. I grew up drinking Natty Ice, or grew up drinking whatever, Keystone, or Busch, like that guy in Minneapolis or Minnesota or Wisconsin that has that YouTube channel. You Betcha. He always likes to go Busch. He likes to poke fun at craft brewery and ales. And yeah, for a long time, the bigs were laughing at craft brewery, but guess what? They're not going away. So they're starting to buy, the small guys. The lagers are making a return, and I lied because it's now $14.39. Lagers are starting to make a return in craft breweries because people want things that are lighter. Sessionable, which means you can drink more than a couple and still be fine. Sessionable is usually like a 4% ABV, maybe 5%, somewhere around that. And this guy's 5.5, so that's right in range. If they're lower in alcohol, they don't have to ferment as long. So sessionable beers can also be a little bit quicker to come out of the fermenters and out of the storage tanks, et cetera, et cetera. And they can be very tasty. They can have a lot of flavor. When this thing was in its prime, and it's still pretty good, it had a little bit of a lack of a head on it, which I'd probably classify as it's died a bit. It's malty, and it has a good malty, full mouth flavor, which has not been typical for traditional lagers in the United States with the bigs. So lagers are coming back. They're coming back a lot in craft breweries. There's a lot of reasons for it, and they taste better than your big beers. And so don't hesitate to get a Vienna lager or a Pilsner or an Oktoberfest or a Bock beer from your local craft brewer, because they often can be really full tasting and very tasty in general. One last thing before I leave, before I depart and go into the netherworld until the next time, is I'm going to be on Brewery Travels tomorrow evening. It's a podcast. This guy's visited like 800 breweries. I happen to follow him on Twitter, and we met up this summer up in Trogs during the hurricane, which was a little nuts because I had to drive back through it. But it turned out fine. A little crazy, but we have a good story. We met up there. His wife was there. His kids were there. In the parking lot, it was pouring rain, but we hung out in Trogs for a bit. And he's moving out to Seattle. So that podcast will be tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. It's not live, so it'll be recorded. And I will post a link to it on Bierkgaard. One last thing, I also have a podcast now on Spotify. I am trying to get it on iTunes. I am trying to get it onto Google Play. I've submitted it. They haven't approved it yet. It says it's on Google Play, but I can't find it in terms of looking for it on Chrome. But that's where I get into philosophical reflections on Soren Kierkegaard. And that my nickname being Bierkgaard is obviously a relationship there. So as we conclude, Brooklyn Brewery, Oktoberfest, I would suggest you buy it when you see it in September, October. I wouldn't suggest that you buy it as a leftover, but as a whole, I'm glad I got it. It's pretty good. Doesn't taste bad. Tastes pretty tasty, but I would prefer it to be fresher. That's the final word.